Okay, so now on to video 2 of derivatives. And in this video I'm going to talk about the simple rules of differentiation. Basically, rules of derivatives. Okay, and next slide. So, first rule number 1. So, let's write out some derivatives. I will pause this video and be right back. Hold on. Okay, so here I have some examples of derivatives, and so as you can see, each function increases by 1 degree. So this is x to the 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so when I find the derivative of each one, I end up, for f prime of x, I get 1. F prime of x squared, I get 2x. F prime of x cubed, I get 3x squared. And f prime of x to the 4th, I get 4x cubed. And so when you look at all of these derivatives, you can kind of see this pattern where when f of x equals x to the n, f prime of x to the n equals n times x to the n minus 1 power. So this is rule number 1. This whole thing, oops, is rule number 1. Yay. Okay, so let's see examples of this rule. If I have f of x equals x to the 25th, then I know that the derivative, or f prime of x, will equal n, which is 25, times x to the n minus 1, which is 25 minus 1, or 25x to the 24th. Pretty easy. So that's number 1. So number 2, let's try f of x equals 1 over x cubed. So first I'm going to want to rewrite f of x. So I'll rewrite this as x to the negative 1, or to the negative 3. So if I want to find the derivative, f prime of x, I would get n, which is negative 3, times x to the n minus 1, or negative 3 minus 1. So I would end up with f prime of x equals negative 3 to the x times x to the negative 4th. And I can also rewrite this as negative 3 over x to the 4th. So that's rule number 1. And now rule number 2. Rule number 2, hold on, I will be right back. I'm going to write this down. Okay, so here is rule number 2. If f of x is multiplied by a constant, then f prime of x is multiplied by that same constant. So here we'll have an example. Let's say I have I'll just use the examples from before. Let's say I have f of x equals, instead of x to the 25th, I'll use like 2x to the 25th. And so f prime of x would just be 2 times the derivative of x to the 25th. So that would be 2 times 25 x to the 24th. And I would end up with 50 x to the 24th. And I guess we'll use another example. Same as before, I'll just use the one from the previous slide. If I have, I'll try to write this smaller, f of x equals 1 over x cubed. Or, well, instead of 1, let's make this, why not 3? So this would just mean I have 3 times f prime of x, of the previous f prime of x. I hope I'm making sense. So I'll write it over here. If I have 3 over x cubed as my f of x, then my f prime of x would be 3 times the derivative of 1 over x cubed, which would be, which would be the same thing as 1 over x cubed would be the same thing as x to the negative third, and the derivative of that is negative 3 times x to the negative fourth. So if I simplify this, I'll get negative 9 x to the negative fourth, or negative 9 over x to the fourth. So yeah, that is rule number 2. If f of x is multiplied by a constant, then f prime of x is multiplied by the same constant. And now, the last and final rule. Okay, so here we have rule number 3, the last and final one. If f of x is the sum or difference of 2 or more functions, then f prime of x, or the derivative of f of x, is the sum or difference of the derivatives of those functions. So let's just look at an example here. If f of x equals x cubed plus don't want to use the same example as this Mr. Vandershe. If f of x equals, let's say, x to the fourth plus x to the fifth, then that is the same thing as f of x equals the derivative of x to the fourth, the derivative of f of x, or f prime of x, is the same thing as the derivative of x to the fourth, which I'll do in red, which is 4x to the third, plus the derivative of x to the fifth, which is 5x to the fourth. And that would be your final answer for this question. I guess we could just do one with the difference of two functions. So let's say f of x equals x to the seventh minus x to the third. F prime of x in this case would be the derivative of x to the seventh, so 7x to the sixth, minus the derivative of x to the third, so that would be 3x squared. So yeah, these are examples of rule number 3. And I believe that is the last rule. So now let's kind of write a summary of all these rules. If f of x equals x to the n, then f prime of x equals n times x to the n minus 1. If g of x equals, let's say, a times f of x, then g prime of x equals a times f prime of x. And then lastly, if h of x equals f of x plus g of x, then h prime of x equals f prime of x plus g prime of x. So here are your rules, 1, 2, and 3. Yay!